Your soulmate screamed their love for you in front of everyone. You won't believe what happened. Open this right now. My beloved child, stop for just a heartbeat, because what is about to unfold is not the story you expected, it is the moment that changes the meaning of every unanswered question you've been carrying. Imagine standing at the edge of an invisible doorway, unaware that someone on the other side has finally found the courage they thought they would never possess. What if, at this very moment, a truth too powerful to remain hidden has already begun echoing through the lives of those connected to your destiny? Stay with this message a little longer, because the first piece of this extraordinary picture is only beginning to reveal itself. There comes a rare moment in every meaningful connection when silence becomes heavier than words. For so long, someone tried to protect their feelings behind careful smiles, unfinished conversations, and quiet glances that disappeared before anyone could notice. They believed their emotions were safer when hidden, convinced that waiting would somehow create the perfect time. But destiny has a fascinating way of interrupting every carefully built plan. The heart grows louder when it has carried hope for too long, and eventually, even the strongest walls begin to crack. That moment has begun. Picture a room filled with ordinary conversations. Nothing appears unusual. Laughter moves from one corner to another. People continue living their routines without realizing that history is about to be written in the smallest space between one breath and the next. Then something unexpected happens. A single thought refuses to stay imprisoned any longer. The feeling that had been hidden suddenly rises above every fear, every doubt, every imagined consequence. It is no longer about keeping appearances. It becomes about speaking the one truth that cannot remain silent. And in that unforgettable instant, your soulmate no longer cares about perfect timing. They no longer calculate who might understand or who might question them. The only thing that matters is honesty. Not because they planned it, but because their heart reached a point where pretending became impossible. Have you ever wondered why some moments seem to arrive without warning? It is because destiny rarely announces itself. It simply appears when every hidden piece has quietly fallen into place. You may think this is impossible. You may ask yourself why such a dramatic moment would happen now instead of months ago or years from now. But consider this: what if every delay was preparing both hearts for a single unforgettable turning point? What if every unanswered question was quietly arranging the stage for something neither of you could have forced into existence? Sometimes life protects the greatest chapters by allowing them to remain unseen until the exact second they are ready to unfold. There is another detail few people recognize. The strongest declarations are rarely born from confidence alone. They are born from realization. Your soulmate has begun seeing your presence differently. Memories that once seemed ordinary have become impossible to ignore. Small conversations now carry enormous meaning. Tiny acts of kindness suddenly feel priceless. The more they reflect, the clearer everything becomes. They are no longer chasing certainty, they have become certain. But here is where the story takes its unexpected turn. When those powerful emotions finally escaped into the open, the reaction was nothing like anyone predicted. Instead of confusion, something remarkable happened. The atmosphere itself seemed to shift. People who had never noticed the invisible connection between two lives suddenly sensed that something genuine had appeared before them. Authentic emotion has a remarkable quality: it cannot be copied, and it cannot remain unnoticed. Even those who say nothing often recognize its quiet strength. Pause for a second and ask yourself this: what if someone else's courage is preparing you for your own next chapter? What if the unexpected honesty you've been waiting to witness is already closer than you imagine? Life has a curious habit of moving everything forward at once, even when only one person seems to take the first step. Yet the greatest surprise has not arrived. Because what happened immediately after that heartfelt confession created a ripple no one could have predicted. A single sentence changed the direction of conversations. Faces filled with surprise slowly transformed into understanding. Questions gave way to clarity. Doubt began dissolving into possibility. It was as though the universe had been waiting for one brave voice before allowing everything else to move. You may not see all the pieces yet, and that's perfectly natural. Some stories reveal themselves one page at a time, never all at once. The mystery isn't meant to confuse you, it exists to prepare your heart for what comes next. Every revelation has its own perfect rhythm, and rushing ahead would only steal the wonder hidden inside the journey. So don't let your attention drift just yet. The next chapter uncovers what happened after everyone heard those unforgettable words, and why the response left even the boldest observers completely speechless. What followed wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It was the beginning of something no one in that moment could fully explain. And when that next piece is revealed, you'll understand why this story could never have started any other way. Not so fast, because the silence that followed those unforgettable words carried more power than the confession itself. No one moved for a brief moment. It felt as though time had quietly stepped aside, allowing destiny to finish writing a sentence that had begun long before either of you realized it. If you think the biggest surprise has already happened, stay with this story a little longer. The next chapter changes everything. As every eye turned toward the one who had finally spoken from the depths of their heart, something remarkable unfolded. There was no need for dramatic explanations. There was no endless attempt to convince anyone. Genuine emotion has a language that speaks louder than rehearsed speeches ever could. Every word that escaped your soulmate's lips carried the weight of countless moments they had once hidden away, moments when they almost reached out, moments when they almost revealed everything, moments when fear whispered louder than hope. But fear had finally lost. For the first time, your soulmate stopped worrying about what others expected. They stopped measuring their heart against opinions, assumptions, or possibilities. Instead, they chose authenticity over hesitation. That single decision became the turning point no one in the room could ignore. Some people exchanged surprised glances. Others quietly smiled, almost as if they had sensed this connection long before it was spoken aloud. A few remained completely silent, not because they disagreed, but because they had just witnessed something rare, a person choosing truth instead of comfort. Think about that for a moment. How many people spend years hiding what matters most? How many beautiful opportunities disappear simply because someone waits for a perfect moment that never arrives? But destiny often rewards courage the instant it appears. The future changes when someone finally decides that honesty is stronger than fear. And that is exactly what began happening here. Unexpected conversations started unfolding almost immediately. People who had never asked questions suddenly became curious. Old misunderstandings quietly faded into the background. Small details that once seemed disconnected suddenly fit together like pieces of a puzzle that had always belonged to the same picture. Then something even more fascinating happened. Your soulmate realized that speaking openly had not made them weaker, it had made them lighter. The burden they had carried for so long simply disappeared. Sometimes the greatest freedom arrives the moment we stop hiding who we truly are. Have you ever noticed how one brave decision can inspire many others? When one person steps into authenticity, others often find the courage to do the same. That invisible ripple had already begun spreading further than anyone realized. Doors that once seemed firmly closed were beginning to unlock, not through force, but through clarity. Perhaps this message has found you because your own journey is preparing for a similar shift. Maybe you've been wondering why certain events have felt delayed, why answers haven't arrived as quickly as you hoped, or why everything has seemed strangely quiet lately. Sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it is preparation. The strongest moments often grow quietly before they become impossible to ignore. If this story is speaking to something deep within you, let me know in the comments what word comes to your heart first. And if you're enjoying this journey together, consider sharing it with someone who might need a reminder that courage can rewrite an entire future. If you'd like to continue discovering stories like this, subscribing helps you stay connected whenever a new chapter arrives. But wait! Just when everyone believed the most emotional moment had already passed, an unexpected response emerged from a direction no one had anticipated. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Yet it carried a meaning so profound that every person present would remember it long after the conversation ended. The atmosphere shifted once again. A single unexpected gesture transformed the entire story from a heartfelt confession into something far greater, a moment that hinted this connection had been quietly unfolding long before either of you recognized the signs. And when that hidden detail finally came into the light, even your soulmate realized that this journey was larger than they had ever imagined. The next chapter reveals what that mysterious response was, and why it changed the course of everything that followed. Listen closely, because the next few moments are where this story stops being a simple confession and becomes something no one could have predicted. The room had settled. The surprise had begun to fade. Everyone believed they had already witnessed the greatest part of the moment. But destiny has a habit of saving its deepest revelation until everyone thinks the story is over. Without warning, someone quietly stepped forward. It wasn't the person people expected. There was no dramatic interruption. No argument. No attempt to change what had already been spoken. Instead, they looked directly at your soulmate with an expression that carried years of silent understanding. Before anyone could ask a question, they smiled and said something so simple that the entire atmosphere changed. "I've been waiting for you to finally say it." Those few words carried more meaning than anyone realized. Your soulmate stood completely still. How could someone else have known? How could another heart recognize feelings that had been hidden so carefully for so long? That question echoed through everyone's mind. The answer was surprisingly beautiful. Real emotions leave quiet footprints. They appear in the smallest gestures, the way someone speaks about another person without realizing it, the sparkle that appears when a certain name is mentioned, the peace that settles over someone after receiving a simple message, the hope that quietly survives every difficult season. None of those signs had gone unnoticed. Long before your soulmate found the courage to speak openly, others had already seen the story unfolding. They simply respected its timing. They understood that some journeys cannot be rushed. Certain truths must arrive naturally, or they lose the very beauty that makes them unforgettable. And perhaps that is true for your own path as well. Maybe you've wondered why life hasn't revealed every answer immediately. Maybe you've questioned why certain opportunities seem delayed while others appear effortlessly. But what if those delays have never been obstacles? What if they have been preparation? Preparation for stronger confidence. Preparation for deeper understanding. Preparation for a future version of yourself who will recognize opportunities you once would have overlooked. The most meaningful chapters rarely begin with certainty. They begin with trust. Your soulmate was beginning to understand this for the first time. As the conversation continued, something unexpected happened inside them. The nervousness that had filled their heart only minutes earlier completely disappeared. In its place came an incredible sense of peace. Not because every question had been answered, but because the biggest truth no longer needed to hide. Sometimes freedom isn't about knowing exactly what comes next. Sometimes freedom is simply allowing your heart to be honest. That honesty began creating a chain reaction. People who had once remained distant suddenly became supportive. Conversations that felt impossible suddenly became easy. Hope replaced uncertainty. And little by little, an entirely new future started taking shape, not overnight, not through magic, but through one courageous decision that inspired every moment that followed. Now think carefully about this. What if someone in your own life has quietly noticed strengths in you that you've never recognized yourself? What if the encouragement you've been waiting for has already begun moving toward you, even if you cannot see it yet? Life often works behind the scenes before it works in front of our eyes. The visible change always comes after an invisible beginning. That is why this story matters. It isn't only about one unforgettable declaration. It is about what happens when fear finally releases its grip and possibility is allowed to breathe. Yet even this isn't the end. Because later that same day, something happened that neither your soulmate nor anyone standing there could have anticipated. A completely unexpected message arrived, carrying a detail that connected past, present, and future in a way that left every heart filled with wonder. That final revelation didn't simply explain what had happened. It revealed why everything had happened exactly when it did. And when that last piece falls into place, you'll see that this extraordinary moment was never just about one confession, it was the beginning of an entirely new chapter that had been waiting for the perfect time to unfold. Wait, don't close this chapter yet, because what arrived next was so unexpected that even your soulmate had to read it twice before believing it was real. Sometimes life doesn't answer with thunder. Sometimes it whispers one perfect sentence at exactly the right moment, and that single sentence changes everything. This is where the hidden pieces finally begin connecting. As the day slowly came to an end, the excitement of that unforgettable confession settled into a quiet reflection. Everyone returned to their own routines, yet something invisible had shifted forever. The world looked exactly the same, but every heart that had witnessed those moments carried a different perspective. Then it happened. A message appeared. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. Yet every word seemed to arrive with perfect timing. The message simply reminded your soulmate that the greatest journeys are never built on fear, they are built on truth. Reading those words felt like looking into a mirror for the first time. Suddenly, every delay made sense. Every unanswered question became another step that had been guiding them toward this very day. They realized something remarkable. If they had spoken too early, the moment would have been incomplete. If they had waited much longer, the opportunity might have quietly passed. Everything had unfolded at the exact moment their heart was finally ready. Think about your own life for a second. Have you ever looked back and realized that something you once called a delay later became one of your greatest blessings? The answers that arrive at the right time often feel far more meaningful than the answers we try to force. That is the quiet wisdom hidden inside this story. Your soulmate wasn't rewarded simply because they spoke. They were rewarded because they chose authenticity over uncertainty. From that day forward, every conversation became lighter. Every smile carried more confidence. Every step forward felt more natural. The future no longer looked confusing. It looked full of possibility. And perhaps this message has reached you for the same reason. Not to tell you exactly what tomorrow will bring, but to remind you that genuine connections are strengthened through honesty, patience, and courage. The next chapter of your own journey may already be unfolding in ways you cannot yet recognize. Sometimes the greatest transformation begins long before we are able to see its results. If this story brought hope into your heart, I'd love to know what part stayed with you the most. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments so others can be encouraged as well. And if these stories continue inspiring you, subscribing is a simple way to stay connected for the next journey we explore together. Before we finish, remember this one thought. The loudest moment in this story was never the confession itself. It was the decision that came before it. The quiet choice to stop hiding. The quiet choice to trust. The quiet choice to believe that truth is always stronger than fear. Those choices create futures. Those choices open doors. Those choices become the moments people remember for years. So if you've been waiting for a sign to keep believing in better days, let this story be your reminder. Meaningful change often begins with one honest step taken at the right time. And who knows? Perhaps somewhere, even now, another heart is gathering the courage to speak its own truth, just as this incredible story began. Until the next chapter of your journey, carry hope with confidence, move forward with courage, and never underestimate the quiet power of a sincere heart. Sometimes, the moment that changes everything is already closer than it appears.